Welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
Gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Why, hey there, my fabulous listener. Welcome to episode 217 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. Thank you, as always, for lending me your ears today. I know there are a lot of podcast choices out there and lots of choices for you to use your time otherwise as well. So I really do appreciate you making me and my podcast something that you're doing today. If you are enjoying the podcast, then I would really love to get to know you too. And one way we can do that is if you take a screenshot and share it on your socials and tag me, so I know not only that you're a listener, but I get to follow along your journey in small business as well. You can find all the show notes for this particular podcast episode at all the W's, social media and marketing.com.au/217. Of course, before we start today's episode, I'd love to know what you thought about episode 216 last week, where we chatted all about business and marketing boundaries. I've had so many great, interesting conversations since that episode went live through DMs and emails and even over a couple of drinks of wine with some business friends. So, setting boundaries. Who knew, right, that it could create such a big conversation? If you didn't listen to that one, then flick back over there when you're finished with this amazing one today. I've got such a great guest. I'm almost popping with excitement to share this episode with you. One other thing though, if you haven't done the small business survey, then I would love for you to go to bit.ly/smallbizsurvey 2022, or of course you can go to smallbusinesssurvey.com and fill it out there. You can do it anonymously, or you can leave your email address and get $500 worth of amazing freebies from the five of us who have collaborated together to pull off this big Small Business Survey 2022. It does close this Sunday on the 20th, so again, I'd really appreciate you going along and doing that. But on to today's episode. And like I said, holy crap, do I have a guest for you. Today, we are talking about Web3, NFTs, and 21st century tech. And my guest is Nicole Brandt-Wazowski. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right. I think I just mentioned Monsters Inc. Wazowski. So I do apologize, Nicole, for getting your name wrong. She promotes herself as Nicole BZ. So Nicole BZ cut her teeth in small business, local economies, and optimizing 21st century technology in business. A die-hard fan for all things creative, connection, and community, BZ weaves her passion with her expertise, empowering business owners and CEOs to make their dream a reality. BZ has worked across the globe and industries and is currently obsessing over Web3 and making NFTs for the next big thing in business, which is exactly why I reached out to her. I followed Nicole on Instagram and I thought, you know what, I need to have this amazing lady on my podcast. Now, in her bio, it says that she's a die-hard fan for all things creative and weaves her passion. You will see both of those things, or actually you will hear both of those things on the podcast today. She's very creative and she's extremely passionate, and I can't wait to share it with you. If you have been listening to this podcast for a little while, you know that Web3, NFTs, and AI technology is something that I've chatted a little bit about, both on my socials and, of course, on this podcast over the last 12 months. It's really something I've tried to embrace this year and will really be shifting into gear next year now that I have a better understanding of all these things. So if you've been listening for a while, or maybe if you haven't, I did another episode, a solo episode back at 175. So episode 175 was, again, it was kind of like me dipping my toe very early on this year about Web3 and NFTs, and just explaining it in Gen terms, basically. So if you're interested in that one as well, head back to episode 175 and listen to that. But otherwise, let's get into my chat with Nicole. Hey, Nicole, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. This is, I don't know whether my listener is going to be quite as excited about this topic as I am, but I am pretty excited by this topic. And it's my podcast, so, I'm allowed to be. But Nicole, can you just tell us, for perhaps someone who mightn't have come across you on Instagram like I have, or might not know much about you or want to know more, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Jen, so much. I am absolutely thrilled to be here. And thank you to the listener for being here with us. I am Nicole BZ, and I have been working in small business since I was 14 years old. And I actually started my very first business all by myself in Sydney in 2003. And I have since started, saved, or led over 40 businesses now.
Oh, wow.
So I have been around the block. And I started originally in the creative industries and ended up in nonprofits. And after moving back to the States quite suddenly, ended up again working in creative industries, but was always very interested in startups and in people that were really trailblazing and thinking very creatively about the way that they build business. And because of my passion for local economies and small business, I ended up working across a whole gamut of industries and, as we say, vertical agnostic. And I really love getting down in the dirt with my small business owners. And I ended up actually volunteering and working with the Small Business Association, which is the national federally funded group here in the States. And I've still volunteer with SCORE. So, there is no business too small, no owner too inexperienced. And I also work with and consult to very, very large businesses working internationally at, what now appears to be a corporate level. And so I really get to see all sides of the coin. And it's absolutely thrilling, I think, what's happening in the business world, both on a macro and micro level. And I think most people are kind of consumed by doom and gloom at the moment. But I actually think there are opportunities we haven't seen in 20, 30 years happening, especially for the smallest and most local of business owners. So I'm really excited.
So my listener already is like, tell me more. So can you give us an example of something you see that is an opportunity that we mightn't have seen in a long time or before?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we're all probably familiar with the buzzwords Web3 and NFT and the blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And if you're rolling your eyes, just hear me out because something else that you may have witnessed, especially if you were very reliant on something like Facebook ads or Google ads and digital marketing in your business, even just monitoring open rates and emails, is all of that data got thrown out the window when Apple released its latest, well, not its latest, it's iOS 14, which I think was around September 2020. And with that release, they asked their users if they wanted to opt out of tracking. And so what that means is when you are engaging on the internet, the different platforms we're following, like your every move. And this is why you might comment on somebody's LinkedIn post, and then all of a sudden you're in your newsletter, and then you're talking to your partner about a holiday gift, and then suddenly you're seeing that advertisement on your Facebook feed. And it started to get a little creepy. And people thought, I want a little more autonomy, a little more privacy in my experience. And so Apple, being a very savvy business, realized they could differentiate their products and their services by really focusing on what their buyers were saying they wanted, which was a more private experience. And so as Apple likes to think differently, with their next iOS release, you have to opt in now for tracking. And that has completely freaked out any digital marketer or any business using digital marketing as its main traffic driver. And so the reason I'm so excited is I feel like your local mom and pop or your brand new emerging online business has the exact same opportunities as someone who's been in the online space for literally 20 years. And whereas before people were spending tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to get, those $1 million profits. Sorry, my light just went out. Uh, they are now able to essentially access the same customer and the same client for the same price. And none of that data, none of that tracking that any of those people were using is working any longer. And so I perceive this as being a completely even playing field for now. And I see new emerging technologies as a real opportunity, not because it's going to save your business per se, but because the business owner or the sort of visionary rebel rule breaker who is going out on their own and trying to do something new or something that they feel very passionate about, that mindset is open to trying new tools and to getting involved in new technology, maybe before everybody else really gets on board. And the last thing I'll say as I get off my soapbox is one of the things that I've learned is usually it's, these local businesses or these people who, are not yet hitting, say, 5 figures a month or 6 figures a year. They feel like they can't afford this technology, that it's not for them, or it's too involved. It demands a skill set that they don't have. And in talking with software developers and engineers and the people who have been in this space building virtual metaverses and worlds and cryptocurrencies, it's surprisingly affordable. It's less than your average Facebook campaign, and it can take a matter of weeks to get up and going. And so, like, when I found out I could have my own metaverse in a month for as much as, some might spend on an entire year's worth of like marketing and Facebook and craziness, it was like, oh my gosh, why am I not having this conversation with more business owners?
Yeah. I think, that's exactly, for my listener who is wondering what, we're wanting to talk about today, that's exactly what I want to explore with you, is those new opportunities that are available through the new tech that's coming to us, and being
Mhm.
able to be maybe one of the first, like not the first. I don't believe in sometimes being the first. I think being second is sometimes better than being first, because then some bugs are being ironed out. But I think there is this real opportunity, and my listener is not averse to knowing that Mark Zuckerberg is not my favorite person in the world, and anything that is perhaps an opportunity that doesn't involve him really does quite excite me a lot. So, can we start, I guess, way back in, we talk about Web3. So, because we talk about Web3, clearly there's a Web2 and there's a Web1. Can you have a bit of a discussion with us as to what Web3 is, as opposed to maybe Web2 is what we're in now and what Web1 was?
Yeah. And look, like, I also just want to be really clear. A lot of this stuff is just a marketing term, like a baby boomer and a millennial. And it kind of describes a certain set of patterns, but by
Mm.
no means is it a be all, end all, one off definition. Everyone here is an expert in Web 1 and Web 2. Web 1 was the first, version of the internet that we all started kind of interacting on, where you'd go to a web page and you could read a whole bunch of information, and that was basically it. It was a very one-sided experience.
Mhm.
Web 2, and that, I mean, like, the date range are sort of the 90s to the mid 2000s, but there's absolutely Web 1 websites out there right now. And it's a static piece of information. You can't really interact with it. We all got very used to Web 2, which is essentially you can read it and you can write on it, you can publish on it. And so you can have what feels like a slightly more interactive experience, but it's still being monitored and policed sort of externally to us. And so you might have a business website that a person can fill out a form or they can chat with you, but
Mhm.
that's still happening. They read something, they write something, you read, you write back, and it's
Mhm.
still, a very sort of linear experience for people. Web3 was actually a term coined in 2014 by one of the original founders of Ethereum, which is an ecosystem on the blockchain. We think of it as a cryptocurrency. And All that means is it's a piece of software that is using a very complex way of encoding the data. So it makes it very, very, very secure. So this creator realized that one of the biggest challenges with Web 2 is it's not very secure.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happening is when we go onto one of these read write platforms like Facebook or even, a business's website, we give them our name, we give them our email address, we give them our phone number, we might give them our birth date, we might give them our personal mailing address. And all of a sudden, we're giving away all of this very private information to a business or entity that we don't know. And more importantly, we don't know what the heck they're going to do with that data.
Yes.
And what they have been doing is selling it or using it to get you to do something. And at first, it actually felt pretty cool. At first, we liked seeing, the different things that we were interested in, and it would start to notice some of your habits and some of your interests. And actually, it was kind of cool that if you were having a conversation with somebody, then suddenly that ad popped up in your Facebook feed and you're like, oh, Big Brother is watching. But then we
How
started to
convenient.
realize, yeah, like you start getting 100 spam emails a day, and it doesn't matter how many times you click unsubscribe, you're getting 3 more emails from that. And we started to realize, this data is monitoring us in a way that feels out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start looking at how unhealthy our habits have become around social media and email. And obviously, the original creators of those software programs just wanted to solve a problem.
Yes.
But the way that our brains work is we really like that instant form of gratification in terms of you read something and then somebody writes back and then you can write to them. And it can feel like this sort of endless cycle that, in fact, we're very much hardwired for. And so Web3 was a proposal by some of these original creators to start to address that trustless, permissionless event that was occurring on Web 2 that we'd almost all settled for. And that's this idea that by signing up for somebody else's platform, you're essentially giving it all away.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know what they're going to do. No one's reading all of those, that thing that says like terms and conditions, click here. Like you're just clicking and going.
Yes.
And so with Web3, what that really suggests is it's a form of the internet that's using the same type of software programming that cryptocurrencies use. It's incredibly secure because it's this very complex coding that happens, but it repeats the sort of beginning and end of every particular interaction. And in doing that, it makes it very, very difficult to create fraudulent transactions, because if you change one small piece of data, you're affecting hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of pieces of data before and after. And computers aren't there yet. They can't like hack that code fast enough. The other thing that happens with blockchain is that you're able to see all of that data in real time. And so it becomes very, very secure for those 2 reasons. It can be very transparent in the sense that anybody can see what's happening in real time. And it's very difficult for anybody, if not impossible, for people to undo what's happened.
Okay. So, I guess when you were talking about, the blockchain and things built on the blockchain, how secure it was. So I would assume that Bitcoin isn't on the blockchain then, because it's always getting hacked and stolen.
So it's not the currency. Thank you so much for asking. That's a really beautiful question. The currency itself is not getting hacked. What's getting hacked are users' holdings of the currency.
Yeah, right.
And so when you're transacting cryptocurrencies, it's just like moving money between a bank. So you guys have been using FPOS for ages. The United States is just getting there. But you can send someone money from my bank account to your bank account.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that using, like Commonwealth or I'm like getting confused with all of my different banks now, but you can transact between banks. You can also send people, like you can use your credit card to send money to people. You can use your debit card. And now we're even using our phones to be able as a wallet. And so if you think of a wallet, like literally the thing in your pocket that has your cash in it, it's not like the cash itself the paper money or plastic, as it were, money is being frauded. It's someone stealing your wallet or someone stealing the cash out of your wallet.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting about it is that because actually Bitcoin is so secure and these blockchains are secure, you can see exactly how much is being taken in real time. You can see what address it's going to in real time. And so you're able to see these big transactions or these fraudulent transactions and see where it's going. But because the system is so secure, just because you have a wallet address doesn't mean you know who the owner of that wallet is.
Okay.
And so some people perceive that as actually being a huge advantage. Obviously, if all of your cryptocurrencies were removed from your wallet to a mysterious wallet, you probably wouldn't agree with that.
No, no, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite.
Mhm.
Yes. So, for a small business owner, where is Web3 going to start for them? Like, what is their first, I guess, dealing? Like, where will their first deal be with a Web3? I don't even know what I'm supposed to say here. Interaction, transaction. I don't know what the right terminology is.
Well, and like no one does, because I think one of the biggest problems is, and one of the reasons I'm becoming such a huge advocate in this space, is we have incredibly talented, hyper intelligent people who have been in engineering and software development trying to explain this technology, and they're using their own language. And,
Mhm.
we don't speak that language yet. And so when someone uses a word that you don't understand to explain a concept you don't understand, it's not very helpful. And so I've been having this conversation with business owners ad nauseum, because what I realized is, as a small business owner, you have a unique problem. And this technology can absolutely solve it. Again, is Web3 going to save small business? No. But it can provide a pretty cool solution to some small businesses to solve a whole different set of problems. And if you think about, like, if we kind of get rid of Web3 and just realize it's like internet on the blockchain, which just means it's super secure and it can be as transparent as you want. And so that's going to provide some value to some businesses. So let's say, as an example, you're a real estate office. You could use a smart contract, which is just a software program. That's all it is. and that smart contract could essentially connect a person to another person. And what they're going to do is exchange. They're going to send one person the title of a home. Now, people think that's crazy. Who would ever buy a home on the blockchain? But we use a piece of paper to represent these hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars worth of assets, probably one of the biggest purchases you'll ever make in your life. And that piece of paper is in some filing cabinet, in our public service offices, which is not the best managed experience that I've certainly participated in. No judgment to the public service people out there. You guys are doing a hero's job for sure. But, we do put so much trust and faith into some of these existing systems. And when you ask yourself, like, what do you think would be more secure? A digital asset that is tied 100% to a paper asset, just like you would back up everything now to a hard drive, to a cloud drive, and have a piece of paper. That's kind of what like the blockchain can offer a lot of different businesses. And so it's just thinking about, is there a way that technology could make my life easier? And in business terms, that means save us money and time. And I think that smart contracts, especially when we talk about them, and again, under another buzzword as an NFT, is a real possibility, because it's pretty accessible for most people to create a representation of value on the internet. And so the real estate example is, I think, pretty obvious, but we're seeing it happen in real time. And so, like, how can a business take advantage of Web3? I think the first question for any owner to ask themselves is, what is the real utility? What is the value that I offer my customer, client, buyer, shopper, however you kind of label that? To me, the biggest investor in your business outside of you, the person who's willing to give you money for what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that person most likely has a lot of different people that they could give their money to. And so they're giving their money to you for a reason. And it doesn't have to be complicated. One, it could be like because they think NFTs are cool and they want to try doing an NFT. Another might be because you're the coffee shop down the road. Like, I don't really believe in competition in terms of business, because I think the more, everybody eats, the bigger the pie. And when we look at our local ecosystems as either being healthy or unhealthy, the more commerce, the more money, the more currency we're running through our local economies, the bigger the pie. Everybody gets to eat. And so, again, when you ask yourself, like, what is it that people are coming to me for? Is it a great experience? Is it the best value? Is it the best quality? Is it the best service? Is it the fastest service? Maybe it's the lowest price. You're going to have probably at least one big reason and a handful of others. And that's where we can start kind of going, so how could blockchain help me with this? And I mean, to be perfectly transparent, it's a cool story. I think there's some very easy use case scenarios where you could start playing with this and testing it and seeing if this works in your business. And like you said at the beginning, you're going to be the only one doing it. And so people are going to talk about it. And right now, at least in the United States, if you sell NFTs as part of your business, it's like national news. And that, that's going to get a lot of hits and a lot of traffic. Now, I also truly believe, and I'm doing this in my own businesses right now, what a smart contract is, again, it's a software program, but it's automated and executed. Now, I can guarantee anybody listening to this is probably using 4 or 5 different software platforms in their business right now. They're probably using an accounting platform, even if it's just an Excel, Google sheet. They're probably using email. They're probably using some sort of invoicing. They're probably using social media or some kind of marketing, Google AdSense, digital technology, so on and so forth. And are you familiar with the program Zapier?
Yes.
Yeah. So a smart contract
just for my audience
that
may not be, can you explain Zapier just in case?
Absolutely. So Zapier allows you to connect one software program to another. And so if I get asked to participate in a podcast and I get an email with a calendar event, I can connect a Google Calendar to a reminder or to a Zoom call or to my assistant to let me remind me that you need to do this. If I create a Facebook post, I can create a Zapier that says, put this in save a link to this so that I have a track of all of the different posts that I've created. And so Zapier has kindly built out tons of different APIs, which just mean ways of connecting different software programs that don't normally play well with each other.
Yeah, I think I've got one set up in my Facebook group. So when you go into my Facebook group, you might put an email address in one of the questions, and Zapier is connected to my email system to create that, so that it sends an email from you filling out that form type of thing. Because my Flowdesk and Facebook don't talk, but Zapier makes them talk.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so you've just listed off Facebook, Flowdesk, and email, 3 different software protocols. And, with Zapier, at some point you end up having to pay for it when you use multiple connections, or you use more, you're trying to do more than one thing essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what a smart contract, what these software programs can do. And the trigger could be the transaction, the exchange of an NFT, which is a digital asset. It could be, a picture of your logo or a QR code, but something that somebody goes, oh, I'll take one of those. They put it into their wallet, they send you money, and it doesn't have to be crypto. It can be crypto, but we're getting all sorts of different solutions now that are letting people use credit cards or whatever currency of their choice, be that the Australian dollar or Bitcoin, to transact online. And that's the thing, all of these protocols, all of these little secret scientific languages are all starting to talk to each other. And that's where I think there are lots of complex processes happening, even in the simplest, smallest, most ground level businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And by opening yourself up to these possible solutions, what you're saying is yes to the evolution of technology, yes to being on the forefront of really cool ways of working with my investors, AKA my buyers. And I also think, like, why does this matter? Right now, your people go to Facebook to put their email address into something that a software protocol grabs to put into an email platform, and then you can get to them. So there's two different businesses in
Mm-hmm.
between you and your people.
Mm-hmm.
What is completely different about Web3 and the promise of Web3, and this is still very much an evolution, is
Mm-hmm.
that there doesn't need to be anybody in between you. I could sell you my products or services by creating this representation of my products or services that gets transferred directly to your wallet, and you send me money. I'm not giving PayPal 3%. I'm not letting Stripe hold on to it for 3 days until they decide to deposit it into my account. My bank isn't skimming off the top or using my money to invest in who knows what. It's a direct relationship. And it also, by establishing that relationship, you can create a ton of different opportunities, because what an NFT, what a smart contract ultimately can represent is an asset, first and foremost. And all that means is a tangible thing that we
Mm-hmm.
think is valuable. It can also represent an event, so an experience, the beginning and end of something, just like any contract. It's a term of agreement for a very specific date and place.
Mm-hmm.
But what an NFT also offers is access. And so in the Web3 world, an NFT could almost act like your Google login. You know how you can kind of go to different websites and you just hit
Yeah.
like use my Google or use my Facebook, or an NFT gives you a very secure, private way of gaining access to a business, to a community, to a club, to a service. Again, whatever the business owner can dream up of in terms of how do I really want to engage with and connect with my people. But I think the last thing that is a really fun way to play with this is a promise. Because once you have someone holding your asset, whatever it is that you've created, you can send them like a free invite or a product to test. You can, through, we commonly think of the software that we use with our phones to airdrop.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can kind of almost like, it feels like you're texting somebody like a picture or a file. Maybe it's a voice message. You can do that with this Web3 exchange if you want. And so it's a fantastic way of sending people rewards, of sending people thank yous, of sending people, heads up, this is coming out, of testing things. And that's where it like gets rid of the middleman. It gives you direct access to your biggest investors, and it gives you a really interesting way of engaging with your investor in a way that we just haven't had the ability to do before.
Yeah, and I think there's so many keys to what you just said there. It really is. It's well, my understanding and what you've just explained there about NFTs and that exchange, you can really create a lot of loyalty through these smart contracts. And
Mhm.
having that relationship with the client, like you're saying, that perhaps just there's a lot of people in the way of doing that right now. And so that's what really excites me about it. But the security and the smart contracts. So, I've come from law many years ago, and then the smart contracts are the thing that has really made me prick my ears up and go, and the security of them and the traceability of them. And I loved
Mhm.
before how you were using the example of the real estate, because I often and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I shouldn't admit this in the podcast. Look, if it's wrong, I'll just cut it out. But, I often explain about the blockchain. It's kind of like the old titles. So I don't know what titles look like in the US, but, when I used to work in law and in property law, we would get these really old titles sent to us. They're very different looking now, but they basically, you could see from the moment that block was created, who had that and how long they had it for. It had their names, it had the dates, and there would be these big like A3 pieces of paper, and they were so fragile. I'd actually love to get one to frame one day. But they had everybody who had owned that property. It was very traceable. You could see everything. Now, unfortunately, you get some digital thing that really isn't near the personality that it was. But that's how I explain the blockchain and the smart contracts, is because you can see everything there and then. It's kind of like we used to have them in paper form. Then we went to these other things that don't show us that traceability. And now we're going back to it, realizing that is actually what we need in the society we live. We need to be able to trace things back and see who's had the interaction where.
Absolutely. And you totally nailed it. I think we have some really obvious examples for the blockchain, but we don't have people like yourself with your expertise able to share your experience for how this used to look and why this is actually, we're just building on what's already been, but we're doing it in a way, the key component is this, like, what happened if that title caught on fire?
Yes, exactly. Yes,
Because it
it
was
really
held and
was the
located.
title.
Yeah, and it was held and located in one place. And this is where you'll hear the centralized and decentralized argument or discussion, I should say. So what some blockchains, not all blockchains. And when I say blockchains, I like to think of it like different countries. And so it's a different ecosystem, a different world. And obviously a particular blockchain has a particular currency. And, like Europe, the EU has the euro dollar, but there's
Yes.
other currencies kind of moving around in there, and they're interchangeable, but they're obviously not the same. So when you think about exchanging foreign currencies, that's all we're really talking about with cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
But there are different ecosystems. So you think about Ethereum as being like a different country, a different ecosystem, and then Bitcoin as being a different ecosystem, so on and so forth. Some of those currencies are decentralized. And all that means is that there is different ways of verifying, proving that these transactions are real. The decentralized ones, it would be as if that title was held in 100 different offices across Australia, and there was different copies. And so every time somebody signed it, somebody copied it and then sent it around. But it's like you had one person, doing that so that you knew for sure that this was not a fraudulent copy. It's the same person. In the United States, we get, oh my gosh, the words are going to escape me. But, we have these people that like use a stamp that sort of impresses upon the paper, a notary public. And that person is meant to be, a representative of the government and very trustworthy. And I'm sure most of them are, but also we're putting so much trust into these systems. And blockchain, because of the cryptography in it and the data coding, if you think about like any code, they're masking the data in such a complex way. It takes hundreds, if not thousands of computers to decode and then like encode, recode again. And so like anytime somebody signs that ledger, in your example, this title, like 1,000 computers decode it. They're like, oh, yep, this is attached to the last signature. And we know that because a chunk of the last signature is at the beginning of the new signature. And then that process is repeated. And so, if you think about if you have 100 signatures, but the beginning and the end are exactly the same on all of them, you can't just change one of them.
Yeah.
You'd have to go and change all of them.
Yeah.
And it's just not possible. And I hear someone saying, well, it might be possible one day.
Yes.
To go back. And that's where this proof of work and verification or proof of stake and decentralized, there is no one person holding this. So you can't think about it like they just grab that title and, do something a little creative with Photoshop and then put it back, because there are hundreds of versions, if not thousands of versions of this title that, again, hundreds, if not thousands of computers essentially have a copy of. So there's just no way to go back in there and alter it. So it's a really cool evolution of exactly what you're trying to describe, this concept of ownership and the transference of ownership.
Yeah. So how far away do you think all of this is to be so natural and casual in our lives, such as, the way that web 2, the internet that we know it now is really just such part of our lives, and, depending on how old you are as to whether or not you remember a time before that, but my children wouldn't. So, how long do you think it's going to be before we really start seeing these sorts of words like blockchain and Web3 and NFTs really becoming everyday language for everyday small business owners?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I'm old school. When I was at uni, I could turn in handwritten papers. And if you had said to small business owners, especially you think your local like auto repair shop or some of these home services or trades or even, real estate, if you don't have a website, you won't have a business in 10 years. No one would have believed you.
Yeah.
Now I talk to businesses that they wouldn't even fathom starting their business without a website, without social media, without email, without, all of these like digital assets. And so I think, how long did that take? 20, 30 years ish.
Mm-hmm.
When like the solutions that I'm proposing and the way that I think blockchain can support business, it's already happening. Some of the stats, and these go back to like June or July, which is already like somewhat outdated, but less than 15% of the world right now has owned an NFT. In the United States, that adoption is a little bit higher. It's more like 40%, but
Wow.
less than 5% of the world is actively transacting on blockchain right now. But so, that's to say, you're like, we're all awkwardly early to the party. What we're seeing is really big companies like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, some of the big music companies, Warner, Universal, and a lot of the like designer brands. So companies that are pretty well funded and sort of very tech forward, really looking at how can they start to use this technology in their businesses. And they're partnering with each other and they're testing these different products. And so this is where I think we've reached a level of conversation around this. Most people, if you said Web3 or NFT, would at least roll their eyes.
Yeah. And that's the
Your
whole
dad would tell
reason.
you,
Yeah, why I want to have these conversations is to make it more everyday language and have people, even if they don't understand it, to be curious enough to go and want to learn more.
yeah. And I think firstly, if you're curious, if you want to learn more, please go down this rabbit hole. You will be an early adopter. You're not going to be the first at the table, but you're going to be ahead of everybody else. And I think I always compare this back to when I was working in music, and some of you oldies out there might remember Napster. And Napster hit the scene, and it was a way that you could download music for free and share music for free on the internet. And most people in the music industry freaked out. All of the major record labels decided that they were going to prosecute anybody that was copying and burning CDs, that were creating playlists online. And, they went very much down the litigation route, which is what we're seeing like a lot of government and sort of bigger businesses thinking about doing, or at least talking about doing in terms of crypto. But there were a handful of creators that thought, oh, wow, more people are going to be able to listen to music now than ever. And if I make music, this could be a really big opportunity. So, despite the fact that most of the world is probably not on board yet with the blockchain, when we think about 80 to 90% of the world has a smartphone. So they have the internet in their hand.
Mm-hmm.
And what we often don't think about in like developing economies is that less than half of the world has access to a financial institution. And whether that's just geography or socioeconomic status, what we can start to do is transact on a global level, free of charge and very securely. And so, like, when I start thinking about the level of access and the profitability that this technology can offer everybody, I don't think we're as far off as people would like to assume we are in terms of this technology. The thing is Web3 going to be for everybody? Absolutely not. Most people are pretty happy to give away their privacy and essentially their freedom just to be on Facebook and, buy, like I don't know about in Australia right now, but there's something called Shop Pay here, where once you sign up for it, you can literally just go onto almost any Shopify like website and like you put products in a cart and you're buying it and you don't even know what card you've used to pay for it. Like, a lot of people are probably pretty happy to just plug in and turn off and let the internet tell them what to buy and where to spend their money. And sure, that's fine. Now, if you're looking to create a real relationship with your shareholders, your investors, the people who are buying from you want to build out that value so that they're going to go back to you, not just because you're the cheapest or you're 5 blocks away, but because they feel like they're a part of your business. And you can create this connection with your customers, clients, buyers, potentially even before you have a product or a business. So you know what you're going to sell, you know who you're going to sell it to, and you know they're going to buy again. That to me is the real opportunity here. And so for people who are looking for a different way of doing business, and I've been playing with this idea, it's the business revolution, where we don't need Facebook. We don't need these third parties getting in between us and our people. We really want to foster this sense of connection because we think what we're doing is valuable and we want to connect with people who value what we do. That's where I think blockchain is going to kind of change everything. Like when I look at like remote work, I've always worked online. I've always used technologies, Skype. I was using Skype back in the early 2000s to connect with people around the world to do business. And I never understood why anybody wanted the overhead of an office and weren't open to this idea that we could create these hybrid work experiences. I talk to like retail shop owners and they think that their business is limited by how many people might walk into their store a day.
Yes.
And my sense is this technology gives you a storefront that is open 24/7, 365 around the world. And there is a community and a customer that wants to buy from you. And this puts like what people are saying, the biggest shift with Web3 is this puts the user first. And so for me as a business that wants to curate the best experience for my customers, clients, buyers, investors ever, that's phenomenal. And I think, what we saw happen just in the last couple of years completely transformed business technology and the working experience. Are we another 2 years off from businesses being metaverses and using NFTs to sell most of their products? I think we're absolutely going to see that shift much sooner than later. The question is this for me? And I do think that that's a unique question with a unique answer for everybody.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with that. Yeah, but even just hearing you talking, like the same marketing principles, the same business principles are applying.
Yep,
It's just a different way
100%.
of looking for a customer or interacting and creating a community. I'm such a big believer in creating communities,
Yeah.
around you. Like, who wants to keep looking for a new buyer all the time when you can create a beautiful community who will continue to buy from you and refer business to you? And I think that this is just such a great way and a different way of looking at that. Nicole, this has been such a great discussion. And I know like I could talk about this for hours. In fact, I could just listen to you for hours. Let's face it, I don't do much talking when it comes to this. I have very limited knowledge, but a huge appetite and curiosity for it. So I can't thank you enough for coming on today and having a bit of a chat to us around what the future might look like and how it might be adapted by small business. Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you wanted to just put in before we finish up?
I would just say, if you're curious, like Google it, email me. You can get in touch with me. hello@nicolebz.com. I have a Discord community. Maybe I can send you that link. It's welcome and free for anybody to join. But truly, these conversations are just beginning. And I think you would be shocked at how accessible and how affordable something like a small NFT offering could be in your business. And if you think about it like a loyalty program, or
Mm.
a membership, a community access ticket, or a ticket to an actual event. Even a product or a service can be sold as an NFT or as a smart contract. And you don't need to be an expert. I say to people all the time, like, tell me how your credit card works. And
Yeah.
they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like,
Even your fridge. Tell
yeah,
me how a fridge works. You put something hot in it and
yeah,
it comes out cold.
exactly. And so we put so much trust and faith in some
Mm.
systems, and we're, hardwired to be skeptical or dubious of others. But I could introduce you to a world of education and support that could help you connect the dots and just ask, like, is this for me? Could this provide value for my people? Is there a way for me to test this and play with this to see, like, does this make sense? Do I want to be a part of this? Or is this not for me? And I'm glad I asked the question, but now I have my answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I will put the links to all of that in my show notes and your email address and things like that. But yeah, thank you again for coming on and discussing
Absolute
with us.
pleasure.
Hopefully in 2 or 3 years' time, this podcast will be like, how did we not know all this? Like, hopefully we'll be so far advanced. We'll wonder how we're discussing these things so early on. But yeah, thank you again for coming on. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope I explained everything in terms that make sense. That's just really my main goal here. I want everybody to feel like they get it.
Yeah, beautiful. We'll wait for some feedback. Thank
Can't
you.
wait. Thank you.
Now, did that chat make your heart race or your head spin or both? I loved it. And honestly, I couldn't wait to share it with you. It bumped the line just a little bit just so I could get it out to you earlier than scheduled. I would really love your feedback on this one, whether or not you enjoyed it, whether or not it's something that you're thinking about and can see the adoption of it in your business. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but you're definitely open to the possibility of what all this new tech could do for you, just like we were when social media first popped up. So head into my like-minded business owners Facebook group, or you can DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn, or of course send me an email, jen@jendonovan.com.au, because I would really love to carry on this conversation with you because it's a huge, big, futuristic topic. As always, if you want to have a chat about your business and your marketing, you can always book a discovery call with me and we can have a look at what 2023 can look like for you. My business will be closing in the next few weeks for the Christmas break. So if you did want to book in a discovery call, I would do it sooner rather than later because there's not a lot of room left in that calendar. Otherwise, that's it for this episode. I will see you back here for episode 218 next week. Just another gentle reminder, if you haven't done the big small business survey, if you could come to the show notes at socialmediamarketing.com.au/217 and find the link for doing the survey, or go to the big small business survey.com and do it there. It would mean the world. Otherwise, if we're not already hanging out on social, let's get social on social. And if we are already hanging out on social, drop me a social line. I'd love to have a bit of a chat with you. Otherwise, whatever you do, my small business peep, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
No time like the present. Tell it like you feel it, say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are. No point in dreaming small.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Yorta Yorta people, on which I record this podcast and conduct my business today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend this respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today as well.